What if everything you thought you knew about one of the most watched pregnancies in modern history was nothing more than an elaborate performance? What if the fairy tale romance that captivated millions was built on a foundation of carefully orchestrated lies? The woman who claims to hold the answers to these questions was never supposed to speak. For years, she lived in the shadows, bound by contracts thicker than royal protocol and silence agreements that could bankrupt her if broken. But now, after years of watching from the sidelines as her story was rewritten by others, she's ready to step into the light. Her name is DL, and according to her explosive allegations, she is the biological mother of 2 children the world knows as Archie and Lilibet. Not a surrogate in the traditional sense, but the woman who carried, delivered, and was then systematically erased from their lives. Her story, if proven true, doesn't just challenge a celebrity narrative, it threatens to unravel the very fabric of royal succession and constitutional monarchy. The whispers started almost immediately. Royal watchers, those eagle-eyed observers who've made careers out of analyzing every royal gesture, noticed something was different about these pregnancies. The secrecy wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. Where previous royal births had been celebrated with traditional fanfare, hospital steps announcements, and proud parental photo ops, these arrivals were shrouded in mystery. But DL says the mystery wasn't accidental, it was essential. According to her detailed account, she was recruited through an elite California agency that specializes in what they euphemistically call discretionary reproductive services. This wasn't your typical surrogacy arrangement advertised in fertility clinics. This was an operation designed for clients who needed complete confidentiality and absolute control over every aspect of the process. The recruitment process itself reads like something from a spy novel. DL describes multiple interviews, psychological evaluations, and background checks that went back generations. She was told from the beginning that this assignment would require her to essentially disappear from her own life for the duration of the pregnancy. No social media, no contact with friends or family, no trace of her existence that could later be connected to the arrangement. What makes DL's account particularly compelling is the level of detail she provides about the logistical nightmare of maintaining this deception. She describes a carefully orchestrated schedule where she would be moved between different medical facilities, always under assumed names, always with different doctors who were told only what they needed to know. Meanwhile, she alleges, the public figure was following her own schedule of carefully timed appearances, each one designed to align with the pregnancy timeline that DL was actually living. The physical demands on DL were extreme. She describes being confined to a series of safe houses, each one equipped with medical monitoring equipment and staffed by rotating teams of nurses and caregivers. She wasn't just carrying a child, she was carrying a secret that could topple governments. Every aspect of her care was designed to leave no paper trail, no witnesses, no evidence that could later be used to prove what had really happened. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of DL's story is how thoroughly she was isolated from the emotional reality of her situation. She describes feeling less like an expectant mother and more like a living incubator, monitored constantly but never truly cared for. The psychological impact of this isolation, she says, was devastating. She was carrying children she would never know, participating in a deception that would define their entire lives, all while being treated as a replaceable component in someone else's grand design. The technical aspects of the deception were equally elaborate. DL provides detailed descriptions of the prosthetic pregnancy accessories that were allegedly used during public appearances. These weren't simple padding or theater props, they were sophisticated silicone appliances, custom-made to match each stage of pregnancy and designed to withstand the scrutiny of high-definition cameras and telephoto lenses. She describes watching public appearances from her confinement, seeing her own pregnancy timeline being performed by someone else, complete with the authentic glow and energy that comes from not actually being pregnant. The contrast between her own experience, dealing with morning sickness, swollen feet, and the physical discomfort of carrying a child, and the polished public performances she witnessed on television was, she says, psychologically devastating. The birth itself, according to DL's account, was a clinical affair designed to maintain the secrecy that had surrounded the entire pregnancy. She describes being taken to a private facility where she delivered under heavy sedation, with minimal medical staff and no family present. The moment of birth, typically one of the most documented and celebrated events in any parent's life, was instead treated as a logistical problem to be solved as quickly and quietly as possible. What happened next, according to DL, was the most difficult part of the entire arrangement. She describes being kept under medical supervision for weeks after the birth, ostensibly for her own health but actually to ensure that she remained isolated during the critical period when the public birth narrative was being established. During this time, she says, she was not allowed to see the children she had carried, not allowed to know their condition, and not allowed to have any input into their care. The legal framework that allegedly made all of this possible is complex and varies by jurisdiction, but DL describes signing documents that essentially transferred not just parental rights but any legal recognition of her connection to the children. These weren't traditional adoption papers, they were comprehensive erasure documents designed to make it as if she had never existed in the children's lives. But legal documents, no matter how carefully crafted, cannot erase human memory or emotional connection. DL describes the psychological aftermath of her experience as devastating. She had participated in bringing 2 children into the world, but she was legally and practically prohibited from acknowledging that connection. She was expected to return to her previous life as if nothing had happened, while watching from afar as her biological children were raised by people she had never met. The financial compensation for this sacrifice was substantial, according to DL, but it came with strings attached that went far beyond simple confidentiality agreements. She describes being required to relocate, change her appearance, and essentially construct a new identity that had no connection to her previous life. The money wasn't just payment for services, it was funding for a complete life makeover designed to ensure that she could never be connected to what had transpired. For years, DL says, she tried to live with this arrangement. She used the money to build a new life, tried to forget about the children she had carried, and attempted to find peace with the role she had played in what she was told was a necessary deception. But watching the public narrative unfold, seeing the children she had carried being used as props in someone else's story, became increasingly difficult to bear. The breaking point, according to DL, came when she realized that the deception wasn't just about hiding her identity, it was about creating a false narrative that would follow these children for their entire lives. They would grow up believing a story about their origins that was fundamentally untrue, and she would be forced to watch from the sidelines as their authentic history was erased. The decision to come forward wasn't easy. DL describes months of internal struggle, consultations with lawyers and therapists, and careful consideration of the consequences not just for herself but for the children involved. She knew that speaking out would likely result in legal challenges, financial ruin, and personal attacks from those who benefited from maintaining the current narrative. But she also knew that continuing to remain silent would mean being complicit in a deception that she believed was fundamentally wrong. The children deserved to know the truth about their origins, and the public deserved to understand what had been done in their name. The evidence that DL claims to possess is extensive and, if authentic, would be difficult to dismiss. She describes having medical records, financial documents, correspondence with legal representatives, and even personal items that could be used to establish her connection to the children. Most significantly, she has expressed willingness to undergo DNA testing that could definitively prove or disprove her claims. The response to DL's allegations has been telling in what it doesn't include. Instead of immediate denials or legal challenges, there has been a deafening silence from those who would be most affected by these revelations. This silence, while not proof of guilt, is certainly unusual for individuals who have previously been quick to respond to negative publicity. The implications of DL's story extend far beyond personal scandal. If her allegations are true, they represent a fundamental betrayal of public trust and constitutional principle. The entire system of hereditary monarchy is based on the premise of legitimate bloodlines and honest succession. Any deception about the parentage of potential heirs would strike at the heart of these institutions. Moreover, the financial implications are staggering. Public funds have been used to support individuals whose very identity may have been constructed on false premises. The tax-paying public has a right to know if their money has been used to fund an elaborate deception. As this story continues to unfold, the stakes continue to rise. DL's willingness to submit to DNA testing and legal scrutiny will ultimately determine whether these allegations remain in the realm of speculation or become established fact. The truth, whatever it may be, will have profound consequences for everyone involved. The children at the center of this controversy are innocent victims of adult decisions made before they were born. Regardless of the circumstances of their conception and birth, they deserve to know the truth about their origins and to have their futures decided based on honesty rather than deception. The silence from those who could easily disprove these allegations continues to be the most compelling aspect of this entire story. In an age of instant communication and professional crisis management, the absence of a response speaks volumes about the potential validity of the claims being made. As we wait for resolution, one thing is clear: the truth, whatever it may be, will eventually emerge, and when it does, it will change everything we thought we knew about one of the most watched families in the world.